It wasn't long after I made this decision that my first Bully Watch opportunity came up. I had just begun picking up a neighborhood kid who didn't have his license yet and who happened to be black. His parents were professors who had been born in Africa and immigrated as adults, and they had become friends with my folks. His name was Guillaume. The school was 99% white, and there was a fair amount of old money in the student body, so there were definitely some Confederate flags to be seen from time to time. So Guillaume was an easy target. He was pretty quiet, but I got to talking to him on our drives to school and found out that he had been the victim of some pretty brutal bullying. He had been followed into the bathroom on more than one occasion and roughed up. Never actually punched, but slammed into the wall, thrown around, his shirt ripped. That wasn't all. The worst of it, at least to him, inspired this lyric. Wrong shoes, wrong face, wrong look. A dead bird smashed into my history book. I cried, everyone saw. Trembling lip, clenching jaw. Guillaume's bully had found the bird outside the science building where it had flown into a window and broken its neck. He put it in Guillaume's history book while Guillaume was in gym. Then he stomped on the book, smashing the bird inside, and put the whole works back in Guillaume's bag. Guillaume found it in the library the next period and cried. I supposed if this were a movie, I'd take Guillaume under my wing, teach him how to box, let him go on a voyage of self-discovery and fight his own battle, and in the process learn that blah, blah, blah. Instead, I went to the two main kids responsible and told them in no uncertain terms that it was going to stop and they were going to apologize. Or else. There was no need for or else. I had a tiny bit of boxing in my background, a pair of boxing gloves each for my brother and me on a long past Christmas morning. Funny story, I'd whip his ass, being bigger and stronger. Then he'd invite his friends over and convince them to strap on my gloves. He'd proceed to box them up with a vengeance. So while I was far from being a pro, I had the confidence of one who had thrown a few punches in his day. This, combined with my lacrosse performances, made me pretty scary to your average high school bully. Both guys immediately found Guillaume and apologized. Another time I heard about a kid getting spit on. I sought him out and asked him for the story. We then went together and got an apology. Our school wasn't that big, so at least in terms of outright traditional bullying, I could keep shit pretty well under control. From the spring of my sophomore year to the time I graduated, I kept my vigil. Not once did I have to kick a single ass. Just being willing to do so was a real enough threat to change behavior. I joined the team my sophomore year, and by my senior year, my smoking was starting to get a bit out of hand. I was having trouble getting my homework done with all of my smoking commitments, and the work I did do didn't stick with me very well. But without the weed, depression reared its ugly head. If my grades started to suffer, my dad would have questions, and I didn't have any answers he'd find acceptable. So I hatched a plan. There was a master key that was kept in the school office behind the head secretary's desk that would unlock any door in the school. It was chained to a big wooden plywood key so nobody could walk off with it, and it got signed out and then back in whenever a teacher needed to get into a room they didn't have a key for. I was going to steal the key. I had an accomplice in my plan, a girl who I had become friends with through our shared interest in poetry. She was a short Indian American girl who, like me, had some issues with depression. While she wasn't much of a smoker, it made her sleepy. She was motivated to get that key for the same basic reason I was. Being depressed made homework a bitch, and she was tired of fighting it. The plan was not complicated and had two basic stages. First, we went into the office, where she created a distraction, asking the head secretary something about school extracurriculars, while I asked if I could check the lost and found. The day previous, I had abandoned a sweatshirt where I knew it would be found and delivered to the office. The lost and found box sat on a table right in front of a big window, which was mostly blocked by the box as well as a large photocopier. I was able to reach around behind the photocopier, though, and unlatch the window, cracking it just the tiniest hair. Not enough that anyone would notice, but enough I knew it wouldn't latch accidentally. I retrieved my sweatshirt and made my escape. We then waited a week after so that when the key went missing, they wouldn't connect it to our visit to the office. The window remained undetected, its latch hidden behind the photocopier, until our night came. My accomplice's responsibility was to distract the school night watchman. She was a cutie and had no problem keeping him occupied with little mild flirtation. Well, this didn't come naturally to her. I told her just to ask about his gun and to giggle a lot, to think of it like acting. She had done some drama, so was up to the task. Meanwhile, I opened the window, pushed the lost and found box out of the way, literally dove into the dark office. I knew just where the key was and grabbed it quick. Now I just had to get out without a trace. I dove out the window, put the lost and found box back into place, closed the window, sprinted to my car. The next day at school, there was a rumor going around that the key had gone missing. They had no clue how it had happened, though. Never discovered the unlocked window. We knew better than to share our largesse, but we had it made from there on out. We were able to steal tests and quizzes as well as answer keys for homework. We had free trips to the snack bar, normally only open during games, and occasionally I'd even smoke a joint in the auditorium late at night. I don't remember where I heard about it, but it was going around the school and was generally believed to be true. That is that a guy in the lacrosse team named Eric had molested Samantha Beaker while she was passed out drunk. I think he had hooked up with her before, so that's maybe why he felt so entitled to touch her body. But I'd like to think that if I had been there and witnessed it, I would have done something. I wasn't, though. I guess there were a few guys there and Eric was sort of laughing while he was doing it, performing for his friends. When I heard about it, I didn't know what to do. I knew that Samantha had heard about it and apparently didn't care, or at least had decided not to report it. Was it okay to avenge someone who didn't seem to want avenging? If I kicked his ass, how could I explain myself without revealing something it was really only Samantha's place to reveal? I didn't know, but I wanted to punish him anyways, and the perfect opportunity to do that was on the lacrosse field. We were doing a fast break drill that started out 4-on-3 with the last defender trailing. The first defender, the point man, was supposed to force a pass and then rotate back, and it was all about staying at home and rotating at the proper time and helping out in order to guard 4 men with only 3. What I did instead was as soon as Eric got the ball, I ran at him and laid him out like he had stolen something from me. I hit him so hard that he dropped his stick and went flying backwards like a giant fucking hook had grabbed him by the belt and yanked him off his feet. The way the fields were set up, the lacrosse field looked down on the softball field, whose left field ran along one of our sidelines. Only it was about 15 feet lower than us, and there was an embankment between the two fields. The point was that there was a fence that ran along the edge of the lacrosse field to keep balls and players from going flying down the embankment, and there was a small gate in about the middle of the field, and the gate was usually kept open, or at least not latched, and long story short, I had every intention to just send him smashing into the fence, but as was often the case, the gods were smiling on me that day, or maybe there was somewhere deep in my lizard brain that calculated the rates of movement down the field just right, because when I hit him, not only did I send him sprawling, but I sent him sprawling through the gate, down the embankment, where he tumbled ass over appetite until he crashed in a heap onto the softball fence. The entire team let out a collective, "Oh!" Several people kind of looked to the coach as if he was going to come to Eric's defense, but he just clapped and said he liked the intensity. He was a very intense guy, and I believe he thought at that point that I had just felt like doing some hitting. There was a buzz in the drill. Nobody knew if I would come after them as well or if the other defenders would follow my lead. I was definitely a leader on defense, and I'd set a special kind of standard. I played hard, aggressive defense, and I was on fire that day. Anybody but the best players on the team, and I was just running through them, swarming them and laying hard slap checks on the bottom hand or on the stick until they lost the ball or threw it away. The best players just had to retreat and keep running back and forth, changing direction until I'd cut them off again and send them back the other way. If they advanced, I put a body on them and hit them with what we called a V-check and pushed them back. If they tried to spin, I'd hold them and take the ground back. The defenders didn't change, but the guys leading the charge on offense did. When Eric came back around again, he was wary, but not wary enough, and I took the first opportunity I had to lay him out again. I wasn't anywhere near the fence this time, so my intention was just to make sure he landed on his head, but that motherfucker grabbed onto me to try to keep himself from getting launched. I could hardly believe it. I just kept driving through him until I ended up crashing down on top of him. The coach didn't say a word this time. Eric didn't finish practice. He limped over to the sideline. Sometimes it's good to be a savage. People talk a lot about toxic masculinity in the macho world of sports, but for me, lacrosse was a mostly positive experience. It gave me the confidence to go into the world and use my physicality to make a difference in people's lives, and gave me a taste for physical conflict and domination, for being in that moment of clashing wills in a completely automatic state, not thinking, just reacting, and hopefully winning, because winning feels great, losing not so much. I didn't seek out fights by any means, but if there was some drunk fucker at a party raising a ruckus, I'd ask the host if they wanted me to take care of it. Or if I saw someone being bullied, I'd step in, stuff like that. It so happens that probably my most audacious act of righteous vigilantism hardly made use of my physicality at all, though I don't know how righteous it necessarily was, since there was a large stack of cash involved in the situation.